Hi, and welcome to the Maybe I Can podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Weiss, and thank you so much for joining me today. I truly appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts, what's going on in my life, and to let you know that we're on this journey together. And it is far from perfect, and that's okay. And I say that because today we're going to talk about the final sprinkle in our series of 12 sprinkles called A Sprinkle of Hope. And here's the thing, I'm going to start by saying, I hope that I can actually record this episode and have it work. And I'm saying that because I recorded the full episode only to find out that it stopped recording after about 4 minutes. And of course, I didn't see that. Then I went back to try and record again, and it stopped after 2 minutes. And so then I rebooted my computer, started again, was about 6 minutes in, and my phone rang, even though I put it on mute. Oh my goodness. This is it. Here we go. I am hoping and I am hopeful that you and I are going to be able to have this conversation. Okay. So I just came back from a beach vacation with my brother and sister-in-law and a couple of their grown kids and their family, and Sam and I. Ben couldn't come. He started a new job and he couldn't take off from work. And so this is the third time that we've done this. We started the year after Gary died, and Sam, Ben, and I met my brother and his family. They live in Ohio. We live in New Jersey, so we don't really see them that often. And then last year, the three of us went, and Ben's girlfriend, Francie, came with us, and we had a wonderful time. This year, like I said, just Sam and I. This is going to sound crazy and bratty and obnoxious. I was dreading it. Okay, who dreads any vacation, let alone a relaxing vacation with your family? Well, sometimes you might dread that. I get that. Me. And why? For so many reasons, right? I mean, this is really bratty and spoiled of me, and I know that. But 2 weeks ago, I got back from a vacation, a 2-week vacation to Europe with my cousins. That was wonderful, strenuous for me, but wonderful. I just came back from that. I was only back to work for less than 2 weeks, and I got to pack and get ready to go again. And then in that time frame, I found out that I need to have some major cervical spine surgery, and that's scheduled for August 3rd. So when this episode drops, I will actually still be in the hospital recovering. But with that surgery, I don't know how long it'll be until I'm able to get back at it, working again. So I feel I've got so much to do in such a short time. And after coming back from vacation, the last thing I needed was to go on another vacation. And honestly, I was going for Sam. I had promised him. He loves it down there. He loves to play golf. Myrtle Beach is a fantastic place to play golf. He has been looking forward to it, and so I couldn't let him down. But I honestly was dreading it. And here's what happened. I had a wonderful time. Now, I wound up taking a day out of the week and working, which was okay because that actually helped me relax. The other days made me feel a little more organized. It made me realize how often we write tomorrow's story before we've even lived it, right? I do this all the time. And I think people do this all the time. In particular, caregivers do it because they convince themselves the test results won't be good. This treatment will never work. Or my life will never get better. I'll never be happy again. Things are only going to get harder. Have you ever told yourself any of those things? Because I've told myself all of those things at one time or another. And unfortunately, Sometimes we are right. Absolutely, we're right. But many times we're not, and life surprises us. When I was thinking about this episode, I realized that every sprinkle we've talked about begins with one sprinkle, and that is hope. Patience needs hope, self-care needs hope, even grief needs hope. Without hope, we stop believing that our small shifts actually matter. And today I want to share 4 times in my life when hope changed. Not that it disappeared, but it changed, and what each experience taught me. Here's the first one. When we have to let go of the outcome that we wanted. So, 1981. Remember, 1981, the world was different. Medicine was different. My father, days before he turns 46, has this massive stroke the day after I graduate from high school. I'm 17. He is in the hospital for 2 months. And then they decide that they want to try this experimental surgery on him, where they do brain surgery and try and reconnect the blood flow from the part of the brain that had the stroke that is kind of like dead, let's say, to the other. And it was experimental. But in those 2 months leading up to that surgery, after my father's stroke, he was paralyzed on the left-hand side of his body. But more so than that, his personality was a little bit different. Or I don't know if the word is off. I don't know how to articulate it. But all I knew is I wanted him back. I wanted my father back the way he was before this stroke. And I was hopeful that this experimental surgery was going to be the answer. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. And then from there, he went to a rehab. And I thought, okay, they're going to teach him how to take care of himself. And this is going to bring the old dad back. And he made improvement. He certainly did. And with each improvement, I really was hopeful that just maybe the old dad would come back. And then once he came home, it was like, okay, is he mentally going to be able to work? I don't even remember how the whole circumstance came together, but they agreed to let him try working part-time. I remember between myself, my boyfriend, and my mother, we would carpool to drive him back and forth. He couldn't do it. He couldn't concentrate. His mind was scattered. He could talk to people, but he just was not the same person. And eventually, I had to realize what I was hoping for was not going to happen. And that's a hard thing to realize and to let go of. I think when we're talking about caregiving, we naturally hope for recovery. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we reach a point, though, where we have to stop asking, like I did, when will everything go back to the way it was? And start asking, what am I hoping for now? Maybe we're hoping for a day of less pain, or in my father's case, walking one step further, or being able to play a game, or have a laugh, or have a meaningful conversation, whatever it is. Hope didn't disappear, right? You can still hope for smaller things. It's just that the hope changed. Instead of giving up hope, it feels like all hope is gone. But if we let go of the outcome that we originally wanted, we realize that there still is hope. It just looks differently. Okay, number 2. Hope leaves room for possibilities we can't yet see. That's so hard for me. I remember when Sam, my oldest son, was first diagnosed on the autism spectrum. He was a little over 2, and Gary and I were taking him for a walk in the stroller after we found out, and we were in a park, and there were kids running around on a playground, kids playing baseball in a league with uniforms and everything, and throwing a frisbee and all the things, and walking through the park and seeing all these kids and all these families and just crying, feeling hopeless, because what was life going to be like for Sam? Would he ever have friends? Would he be able to play a team sport? Would he be able to be an independent adult, to go to regular school, not knowing what his future would be? Not that we know what anybody's future would be, right? But with typically developing kids, at least you have a general idea. You know, the quote unquote normal things of life, going to school, having friends, going to birthday parties, maybe becoming interested. Maybe it's not sports, maybe it's dance or music or theater or whatever it is, like having some interest. You don't know when they're little what their interests are going to be, right? And then finding friends with mutual interests, and then going to school and coming, whatever, having some form of career and so on and so forth. We all know the stages of life, right? But with a child who is not neurotypical, that future is incredibly uncertain. And I remember just hoping that somehow everything would work out. And believe me, he's 25 years old, and it is an ongoing, it's ongoing for all of us, right? It's life. Life is uncertain. But back then, there was a possibility we could never have seen because it didn't exist. So how could we have known? For 2 years now, as a streamer, basically he has a quote unquote show. He works for somebody else, a 6-hour show. He's on the air, meaning on this website called whatnot.com, selling trading cards, mostly football cards. So 6 hours, often he works 6 days a week. He loves it. It is taking all of his strengths, which is, if you know anyone with ADHD and or on the spectrum, getting to them to concentrate or learn or focus on things that they're not interested in is nearly impossible. But the gift is, if it is something they're interested in, they have the ability to hyper-focus. And that's Sam. He loves sports, especially football, baseball, and basketball. And so here he's on the air chatting with people about football and other sports, selling these cards, talking about the cards. He is very loud and gregarious, and it is just the perfect job for him. It's a future we never could have imagined, because before this, he tried all kinds of other things, small part-time jobs, working in a gas station, working as a cashier. It's not like he didn't have the ability to figure out what to do. It was that it didn't interest him. And so he didn't do a very good job because it was something he really hated. And so looking back to that time over 20 years ago, there is no way that I ever could have predicted this possible outcome. And I think one of the greatest gifts hope gives us is the ability to admit, I don't know how this story's going to end. Sometimes the answer isn't what we expected. And like in this case, sometimes it's something we never even knew was possible. If I had insisted on Sam's future looking one particular way, if I had locked into, well, he's going to go to college and then he's going to come out and be, I don't know what, an accountant, an engineer, a scientist, I don't know. If I had been so locked in to that way, that is the only path, I might have missed appreciating this wonderful life that he has been building. Hope leaves room to be surprised. Is there a possibility that you might not be able to see yet? I'm sure there is, but it's so hard. Okay, number 3. Sometimes hope has to become smaller before it can grow again. This is a little bit similar in my mind to the first one. So I've talked many times about Gary, my husband, and being diagnosed with cancer and also suffering from mental illness, but I haven't talked as much about prior to that. Who was he prior to that? Gary passed away when he was 65. When he turned 50, I remember saying to him, "What do you have, male menopause?" He got cranky. His body started really breaking down. He wanted to do less and less things, made him happy. And he had a lot of things, right? He had a lot of diagnoses at that point. He was diabetic. He had suffered with Crohn's disease and irritable bowel syndrome for pretty much his whole entire life. We knew at that point, when the kids got diagnosed with ADHD, Gary got diagnosed with ADHD in his 40s, and then depression, and then anxiety, and as well as some other things. And all the time, I was searching and hoping that something would be the cure. Maybe it was this medicine. Maybe it was this kind of doctor. Maybe once he had his sugar under control, eventually he stopped working. Maybe now he's not going to have the stress of work and he's going to go back to the old Gary, the Gary prior to turning 50. I was always hoping for the right answer. And I'll tell you, we're talking over a decade. That each time there was an issue, I was always searching and hoping for an answer. And I spent years. I tried to make him go to doctors. He wouldn't agree to go. He didn't take medication. He didn't want to. He had a mind of his own. And I spent years trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. And it took a long time. And I eventually realized that hope wasn't finding one magic solution. Even though I wanted to, hope became much smaller. Instead of hoping that I'd solve everything, I began hoping for one good day. For goodness sake, I hope to have Gary smile. I hope to hear him laugh. I hoped that he would have a moment of connection with the boys. And as caregivers, I think one of our deepest hopes is that the people that we love won't suffer. I hope that for everyone, for my father, for Gary, for Sam, in a different way of suffering, not the suffering of a disease, but of how he goes through the world and is perceived and made fun of. I hoped for Joe, my stepfather, and even for Yogi, my dog. If I could have taken away the pain, I would have. But eventually I realized that love doesn't always remove suffering. I wish it could, but sometimes love simply just walks beside it. And that realization, it made my hope more realistic, and instead of hoping to control the outcome, it was, well, what small thing instead can I hope for? And the last thing is hope is choosing the next step. So that brings me to where my life is today. And I'll tell you, I guess I haven't really done an audit, but right now it feels like a time in my life where so many things are uncertain. My career is uncertain. My finances are uncertain. Where I live is uncertain. My physical health is uncertain. And I say that because If you're a listener, you know that the insurance company that I worked for came out with a new contract, which will most likely slash my income by 40%, which then leads me to the uncertainty of, can I afford to live in my house? Which unfortunately then has led me to look into what I need to do to sell my house and find out, oh boy, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. And that brings on financial uncertainty for all these different reasons. And then, of course, I found out that I have to have cervical spine surgery. And it's a possibility that once I recover from that, I'll have to have lumbar spine surgery. It feels like everything is happening all at once. And I don't know how any of this is going to turn out. I keep searching. I keep using AI. I want a fortune teller. If I had found a fortune teller in Myrtle Beach, I probably would have paid her some kind of money to say, just tell me how this is going to end up. But then this trip to Myrtle Beach reminded me of something, that just because I can't imagine something turning out well doesn't mean that it won't. Life has surprised me many times before, and maybe it'll surprise me again. Here's the thing. Hope isn't certainty, even though I wish it were, but it's not. Hope isn't pretending everything's going to be okay. It's deciding that today's uncertainty doesn't get to steal tomorrow's possibilities. I'm going to preface this by saying I am trying to stop asking, how is all this going to work out? And instead, just ask, what is my next right step? Because hope doesn't live in knowing, right? I mean, that's pretty much the definition. It lives in the moving. So maybe today your next step is making that doctor's appointment, asking for help, taking a walk, or maybe it is simply getting out of bed. Because I've been there. I've been that person who just couldn't bear to face the world. And getting out of bed was a chore. Hope often begins with one of these small steps. What if you say, that's all fine and good? I don't feel hopeful about anything. And I get it. That's honestly how I feel. Sometimes when so many things are going on, you catastrophize everything and it makes it feel like your whole life is out of control. So how do you find hope again if you've actually lost it? Acknowledge the hope you've lost. It's where we always seem to start. Just awareness. We're going to acknowledge sometimes we're grieving the future we expected. So, it could be like in my stories, I was grieving the fact that my father was never the same again. And that's why I've lost hope. And that's okay. I acknowledge this is why I've lost hope. So now I ask myself that simple question. What am I hoping for now? What am I hoping for now? And I would say, if you're a journaler, and even if you're not, please be open to trying. And once I'm done recording this episode, I am actually going to do this. I'm going to journal on this question. You can think about it, and that's great. And if you're driving, I get it. And, you're like, I don't know what to write. But when you start writing, what am I hoping for now? Just answer that question. Don't edit yourself and let it flow. I think you'll be amazed at what comes out of that brain of yours that you're not aware of. Leave room to be surprised, right? Don't assume you already know how the story ends, because you don't. None of us do. We think we do, but we don't. So be surprised in a good way. Borrow hope. If you don't have it, try to borrow it from a friend. Maybe it's a support group. Maybe it's a podcast. Maybe you've happened to stumble on this podcast just at a time that you felt hopeless and you felt that you were the only one feeling that way. You're not alone. Maybe you landed on this podcast today for a reason. I truly believe that. Maybe you borrow hope from a book or a therapist, whatever it is. If you don't have it, borrow it from someone else. The next thing to do is hope for today, just for today. That's simple. You don't have to solve the next 5 years, how it's going to end, what's going to happen. What is your hope for this afternoon? For this conversation you're going to have with a friend? Hope for this next step. And that leads me to the last thing. Keep moving. Keep moving. I know you're not sure. I know. None of us are sure. There is no certainty in life. Action often creates hope. And honestly, that's what the sprinkle effect is all about. So here's some other questions I want you to ask yourself and reflect on. What hope am I holding on to that may need to change? I'll repeat the same question over and over. What am I hoping for now? Where have I already decided my story will end? Think about that, because I'm sure you have. Have I left room for life to surprise me? I think so many of us don't leave room for that because we don't want surprises. But most people are afraid of surprises because they're afraid of uncertainty. And what is one small step I can take this week that reflects hope instead of fear? And this week, every time you catch yourself predicting the worst, stop and ask yourself, do I know that's true? Or have I just written tomorrow's story before I've lived it? And then, of course, you're going to ask yourself, what am I hoping for now? And finally, take one small step toward hope. As we come to the end of this sprinkle series, I hope you'll remember this. Life has surprised me more times than I can count. It surprised me after my father's stroke. It surprised me with Sam. It surprised me in ways I never could have imagined while caring for Gary. And just this past week, it surprised me on a beach in Myrtle Beach. I almost missed that joy because I had already decided how the story was going to go. Maybe you're doing the same thing with the chapter that you're living right now. Maybe the chapter you're dreading isn't the chapter that actually awaits you. You don't have to know how your story ends. You simply have to leave room for life to surprise you and then take one small step forward. Because that's what the sprinkle effect has always been about. One small shift, one small step, one sprinkle at a time. Go out there and make it a fantastic week.